Welcome to another episode of Talking Sense. This is part of our Empowered CMO series. So we are finding the most amazing women CMOs, ones changing the face of the industry. So who better to have on Talking Sense than Anna Griffin, CMO of Smartsheet.
I think I need to hire you as my agent. That was, wow, I've never been quite introduced that way. Thank you.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it. I'll be your opening act any day. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. So one of the things that we talk about with Empowered is we talk about Chief Market Officer versus Chief Marketing Officer. And I kind of want to get your take on that.
Well, I remember the first time having this discussion, probably a little over a year ago at the Empowered Women's CMO retreat. And I loved it. I mean, I was writing it down just as fast as I could. I was like, yes. You know, that's the difference, you know, thinking about market and market making and insights for market making is what marketing ultimately executes. But it felt like this really nice difference between both strategy, planning, and thinking, but then also the world of all the things marketing has to do to support and execute. And so I loved it because what I have found is somehow over the years, marketing is getting associated with arts and crafts. And meaning that, you do events and advertising and the decorating, or we call the marketing team when we need to worry about the color palette, or if we're going to hang something up, you know, in the new building, or if we're going to design, a jersey and we need the brand police, or, you know, it's just, and sure, that is a function of marketing, and it has an important role and a place. And I think some of, all the, creativity and imagination and bravado that comes from marketeers plays out in those venues beautifully. But I think it's caused the industry maybe to over rotate and change the definition of marketing. And I don't think, our the most talented people in our craft like to think of themselves as arts and crafts. They do like to think of them as strategic thinkers, because they are. And so I love that notion between market and marketing, and there is a role for both. And I would argue the role probably is both. I don't think it's your one or the other, but I think being able to dial up all those instincts that you have as a marketeer into more honing and fine-tuning it for market perception, need, opportunity, it is really much more around creating market. And so I love that you're having this conversation. I think it will reshape the role for many marketing functions going forward, because it empowers them to think about the job differently and the role. So I love you're having this conversation.
One thing, some have gone so far to change their title. I'm not necessarily saying go out and change your title. I think it's more about maybe starting to show up a little bit differently. After you heard that, I guess, are there things you started to do that you didn't do before? Or are there things that you maybe noticed about what you did that you hadn't highlighted as much? Like, how has it kind of shaped how you show up and what you do?
Yeah, I think I wasn't one to go and actually I do. Funny story. I actually do remember sending my boss an email literally, you guys are talking, because I'm so excited. I'm taking notes, and I shoot an email saying, hey, I think I'm going to change my title from Chief Market Officer to Marketing Officer. And I think I got this perplexed response back, like, hey, you want to talk about this later? And what I realized, though, to me, it was less about changing your title. It's just changing your mindset and kind of forcing that proactive thought around that which I need to pay attention to make happen. Proactive, thinking versus all the things that I need to do in balancing the demand of the job. So I think it is that conscious pay attention to the voice that is proactive, seeing and finding and hearing things in market.
My biggest priority that our exec team agreed on for the marketing function is community.
Yep.
And I don't even really know what it means yet, right? But we're gonna figure it out.
No, I love that you're doubling down on community. I mean, it's always been like, I remember even the early days admiring some of those original community brands, American Express, opened by American Express, and that power of the small business owners who coming together to be able to play a bigger game or against a bigger entity. And so community does a beautiful job always of stoking that inner desire or fire, bringing like people together, and then feeding and stoking. And so being able to make that work for your brand or your business model or your technology is huge. So I love that Drift is thinking about that.
Well, we'll see where it takes us, right? So let's talk about, when you interview, they used to ask, are you a full stack marketer? What does that mean? Are you demand or are you brand?
Oh yeah. That's the class.
I want you to create a category, right? This is all the stuff that comes up. How do you think about like the marketing function? Like what should the marketing function sort of own, and then what should the marketing function at least influence?
Yeah, so fascinating. The question always cracks me up because it's like you're immediately damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you answer one question a certain way, then you're not going to be potentially the profile or whatever. It just cracks me up when that question gets asked. And of course, I always say neither and both. Like what kind of question is that? I try to flip the question because it's sort of like you immediately stereotype someone, which is the complete opposite of interviewing someone. An interview should be about understanding how someone thinks, understanding about their mindset and their approach. And that, to me, is where you will discover if somebody is T-shaped. And I know you've read a ton on T-shaped organizations and T-shaped mindsets, but marketing is the classic, to me, T-shaped function. You have to go deep. You start doing one thing deep and you do it well. And I guess that's where which things did you do deep and well, the best, performance marketing or, demand gen, or brand. But the point is you learn one thing, but then you apply your broad mindset across everything that you're going to touch, not only in marketing and your perspective and your ability to think and rationalize and to be curious. You're going to apply that across everything. And then inevitably, as a CMO, you're not only going to apply it across all functions of the marketing team, you're going to apply it across the entire business, which frankly is chief market officer. And so, I guess your question was, well, what do I think, marketing should own? I don't know that it's about ownership as much as it is about, because there's lots of different models. Like, I think marketers should have all of this and all of this. I think there does have to be accountability for what is the all-up impact, both the ROI and the impact of marketing in a company, regardless you physically own pieces or parts of it or not. You have to understand, where are all of these things leading us? Where is brand leading us? Where is experience leading us? Where is demand leading us in totality? And that's the role of marketing. Honestly, you want to know, are you doing the right things and making the right impact and investing at the right altitude for the opportunity at hand?
Yes, it is. It is the roller coaster of marketing. But I want to dive in on one of the things you talked about, which is the impact of marketing in totality. Like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, the answer is brand. But somewhere along the way, even the definition of brand got changed. And brand to me is the totality of one's experience across every impression that they have and have ever thought about your company.
that is your brand. That is the power of your brand. That should therefore be the power and the measurement of your company and your company's, ability to attract and to retain. So brands somewhere along the way got associated with advertising and brand studies and arts and crafts instead of the ability for a company to attract and retain customers and employees. So I think you measure in the totality of the brand's influence, which again starts to become measurement in things that are much more like loyalty and virality and lifetime value, and those become the most important metrics. But somehow everything's now become about short-term, immediate impact. Click it, measure it, spend it. Did you get a higher click than not? We've lost the eye on the prize.
It's sort of like I talk about inspecting bark, not even a tree, much less a forest. I don't want to know about the bark. Right. And so I think the brand is like, you see that in ASPs, you see it in cycle times, you see it in win rates, you see it in all of these things. And tricks, my old company, our rates were higher than Accenture's because the brand that we had built around our very unique expertise, right? And that was people. That's really hard. So, but I feel that aspect, you're right, has gotten lost. And unfortunately, in those interviews, you kind of know if you say brand, they're going to be like, right?
Totally.
At least I feel, and I'm like, if you want one person, that's what you should, maybe don't need a CMO, right?
Yeah. And what they don't realize is that brand defined properly is what gives demand gen proper lift and acceleration. And you can't decouple the two things. It's not like, well, are you brand or demand? Because we just need, to hit some revenue goals so we can, do IPO. And I could argue a counter and almost more productive argument on the power of properly positioning yourself to deposition your competition, to elevate your stature and your point of view in the market, which will give you all of the demand gen that you've ever dreamt. But you're not going to get there with just demand gen. And so, it's always a fun debate.
It is. And I think sometimes maybe we just have to self-select, right? Where the best places to be are. Insights are such a great way to distill that myth, right? Because you're bringing the data. And so maybe talk about some of the things that you're doing at Smartsheet to bring market insights to the organization.
Yeah. Well, you also said the other dirty word. We started with brand, and it's become this sometimes dirty word. I believe data should quickly start to become the dirty word, because the way that I see data used, data can say whatever you want it to say. You can pull pieces of data, whatever argument you need to be made. And by the way, that's not just marketing teams. That is the entire company. And so I find data and real data insights, the ones that feel more ethereal are the ones that I find the most value. And so, finding them in social, finding them in, online chats or sites, finding them in various community type platforms is probably more or as valuable as any, data insight, that, our report says this, we had this much volume, we had this much conversion. It's like finding the data behind the data, which I think you often have to go search and find it in a different place. And those signals that you find in those types of communities, I think are often far more powerful because they are, they signal whether someone likes you. You know, say like clicks and conversions and all these things, even the selling a good close one, they're all important measurements for a business, but they don't give you a signal. Do people like you? Because if people like you, they're going to do more for you. They're going to talk about you. They're going to, again, lift the virality of the company. They're going to do the hard work. And so we have very few signals to actually measure like and likability.
You are so alive. Like, we're not even in the same room. We're on Zoom, and I've had the pleasure of being in the same room with you, but your energy is just, and you don't say a lot, is my observation. But there's a G that's just overwhelmingly pulsing out. And clearly you're always just analyzing, taking it in. I don't know. A lot is being processed, and it's amazing to be around. So I just have to say that. I can like feel, you know, and the fact that I can see you scribbling and highlighting, and like, yeah, that's just how you approach life. I love it. I love it.
Oh,
must be fun
thank you.
For execs and your team to be around you. Live wire.
Well, you know, I would play contrary on that, because I don't know that is for everyone. Sometimes energy makes people nervous, or just it's the opposite of people. And so that's probably one of the challenges I've had in my career in most of my life, is that the trying to be true to who I am, which I know can sometimes be a little different. And sometimes that differentness can be, it's perceived as eclectic or in a frenzy or so much energy all over the place, where the discipline of what they're trying to parlay is calm and control and operational rhythm. And so sometimes I feel like I can get pegged, making people uncomfortable. And I go like, well, maybe I need to pull it back and be more like everyone else. And that's always backfired in my face. I would, maybe the one piece of advice I would give to all of your listeners is you have to be who you are, and you have to somehow find some confidence in that. And you also have to know that you will not always be liked. In fact, you will probably be hated for a lot of the things that you are, but that's okay. Like, I remember as a little girl, someone told me, just growing up, just having, just social things that happen with teenage girls. And I remember not being liked by a group of girls. And I remember someone told me, but it never left me. I didn't like the answer at that time, but someone said, it's better to be hated than ignored. And at the time I didn't know how to take that. Like I said, I did not like that answer, but I have thought about that. It's like, I would rather be comfortable and be who I am and play the role that I think I can play to help companies or teams or brands, or even outside of the workplace. I'd rather be comfortable in the skin of who I am and realize not everyone's going to like that. Not everyone's going to be comfortable. And some people are going to want the opposite of that, versus trying to conform and be like everyone else.
I think we've all had those stories, right? Where you're not true to yourself, or you think you got to conform to something. And those end up to be where you don't perform well.
There is always the thing of, maybe it's that fear of being hated. Like, you never want to be too confident. Maybe that's, oh my God, I feel like I'm on a sofa doing a therapy session with you right now, but I just had a breakthrough, Latané. But I think it was probably, growing up, being a woman in the South, and you are, as a woman in the South, or a girl, a child, or whatever in the South, you are to be liked, and you are to be pleasant, and you are to be of service to people, and you are all these things, and that's just how you're raised, or how I was raised. And so I think that fear of not being liked put this confidence thing in me. And it's something I've had at the very beginning of time, despite whatever accomplishment I had, it didn't matter. I didn't feel like it was good enough or big enough or important enough. And so I just always had this lack of self-confidence. And even today, age 50, I can still walk into a room and just feel that pit in my stomach that says, I know you know the answers. I know you know the instincts, but I'm so still that fear of being judged or being put in a corner or being not, fitting in. It's still alive, all these years later. So I think now it's just being more aware of it and knowing how to find, but it's okay because you're not going to like me and I'm going to be A-okay with that. I really didn't have that breakthrough until honestly, the past year or two.
So you just got a pretty cool, I don't know if it was an award or a nomination or I was so stoked. And basically they named you as someone to watch who will be a CEO.
Number one, very humbled that anyone would think that. And I think, it is destiny follows story. It's just something I've always believed. It is how your mind works. And it's sort of like whatever, your mind is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So whatever story you kind of set for yourself, regardless you know it or not, it manifests, it comes true. The problem is most people set smaller stories for themselves. So when I think of kind of going back in time, I remember even being in marketing. I remember my CMO, my favorite mentor of all times, or early in my career working for her. And she said, oh my God, you're going to be a CMO. I was like, no, I'm not. Like, who? I don't do what you do. I can only think the way you think. I could never do what you do. I'm just happy doing what I do. And at that time it was working and raising 3 young children. It's like, I just want to be a happy mom. No, thank you. Of course I would never want to be a CMO. Well, her just saying that, regardless, I knew it or not, light switch went on. And then that started to become the self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's interesting that about 2 years ago, a boss said, you're not a CMO, you're a CEO. You're going to be CEO one day. And I was like, what? And I remember just so taken aback by that. I was like, what? This is a CEO of a stock exchange too. And I was like, no, I'm not a CEO. Like, God, I just made it a CMO. But I couldn't even fathom that anyone would see me in that light or that I would even want to be that. But it was the same thing. Like all of a sudden an unconscious light switch goes on. So I can't say that that's my story for myself, but I kind of see you're always rewriting your stories, by the way. And so I see every year, every experience, like the stories for myself, which inevitably is going to shape the destiny, start to change. And so maybe, who knows, like the light switch is on. I see myself re-authoring. But I think that's why we don't have more, I know that's why we don't have more women CEOs. That's why we don't have more women in leadership positions. Self-fulfilling prophecy. We have not been told and we have not seen that is possible for us. We all know you cannot become, that which you cannot see. You can't be what you can't see. And so it's just, therefore it's not in everybody's natural story. However, some people have been told and been given the gift of being told, stories about them and their potential and what they're going to be. And I feel like those are the women who have gone forward and done great things. I think for the rest of us, we got to get our story straight. Right? Like we really do. We have to get the story straight. Just because the world might have authored us a story, you can always rewrite your story. So I think that's where it's that soul searching of what are your talents? What do you want to do? Where do you feel you're going to make your impact and your contribution? And then go write that story. And I think a lot of women would actually find that it is CEO. I just don't think they've given themselves permission to even think that,
How do we turn more of that light bulb on?
Yeah, well, I think we do some of the magic words that you said at the beginning of this call, which was community. Because I think if we don't have women helping, encouraging each other to shape our thinking and our perspective on possibility and our mindsets. It's sometimes that is the story. You have to put yourself in the book. And in a weird way, I think of community as the book. Put yourself in there with people who are authoring, the chapters, so you can start to figure out, how you want the book to end. And so I think that's one way. Another way is, it used to be 1 or 2 people breaking the glass ceiling a year. And now it's like, no, it's 10 people a month. And next year it'll be 150 people a month. And so, time catches up and momentum. But I think, until we get that, time gap, I think it's properly telling the story of what a CEO is. What does a CEO do? Because it might not be as defined as the world defines it today. There's other perspectives to look at the role of a CEO, and maybe one that fits more to a feminine, mindset or perspective. So, I think I challenge both sides of the stories. Like, I think that defined side that a CEO is this and does this, I don't know that that's the right story either. So I think we can rewrite the story on that end while we're rewriting the story of the people who potentially can see themselves in that role. So I think it's both sides of the house.
I'm looking at the new image right now, and I'm excited to see how this all unfolds, Anna Griffin. Really excited. And I love having you part of the tribe and the community. Always learn something new every time we talk, which is so fun. It's time we're going to switch gears. It's time for talking nonsense. This is where on an industry trend, a buzzword, not that we haven't been doing this the whole time. So it's kind of ironic, but what is that one thing that you hear and you're like, no, fingernails on the chalkboard, really?
Yeah. Oh gosh, what are the things that make me laugh the most right now? I'm scared if I laugh about them, I'm also going to cry about them, because it's the thing that you live in. So I hate, but I say it every day. So I'm guilty as charged, but I hate brand to demand, threading brand to demand. The funny word in that is threading. And what is interesting when I think about, the role of the marketing team, a market officer, however you define it, it is a master knitter. I mean, there is a threading that does have to be done, but I can't stand brand to demand, because it's easy to say, because everyone knows, like if we would just start connecting brand to demand, and we would have but yeah. But, if I had figured out a way to properly measure brand, I would have made billions on Madison Avenue, because nobody has really been able to measure it, and so or measure it in its totality. So it cracks me up that we just go, well, we're just going to thread brand to demand. So yeah.
Last question here, but you kind of can't get off the show without colossal F up. Embarrassing story, colossal F up.
I've worked really, really fast, and like you said, I see you scribbling all the time, and so I just work at this very frenetic pace. And I remember putting somebody in my phone, a gentleman named Christian, and I just had him Christian. And then I think, maybe somewhere else I met another guy named Christian, put him in my phone as Christian, and maybe iPhone was thinking back then. So I had these 2 Christians in my iPhone. So I'm calling one who we've been talking on the phone. So not so much text, but I'm also having this text thread going with this other Christian. So I'm having phone calls with a Christian, and then I'm texting, and I realize I'm texting this other Christian. Okay, so long story short, there's this Christian that I want to hire. And the other Christian, I had talked to maybe a year ago about job transitions, his career, where he was going, or whatever. And so he parlayed that I was offering him a job. And so this other guy who really wanted the job and was going to move to Seattle, this person was in San Francisco. This other Christian was in New York and was looking to get out of New York. And so the narratives between the 2 gentlemen, but one was much more of a phone conversation. And because I had the phone conversation, I'm just texting with the other person. Well, I'm texting the wrong person. I end up offering the job to the wrong person. And because a lot of things now are happening on text. Send me your personal email so we're not doing it over work kind of thing. And so I had no idea that it wasn't the right Christian. This guy to take the job that and I'm realizing it wasn't until like we're literally like figuring out offer contract that I had the wrong Christian. So so that was a colossal fuck up, and that was one of thousands in any given day. But anyway,
did you hire both Christians? You're like, we'll take 2 Christians.
I finally got the right one, and I just felt so terrible for the other Christian because he really thought he was getting this job, and was finally like, it was terrible. It was terrible, but all ended well, and he has his dream job now too. So all ends well.
You are so awesome. Thank you for coming on. I think we covered a lot of ground. We covered Chief Market Officer. We covered, CMO to CEO, your personal story. We covered rewriting our stories, and that is the best colossal fuck up I've heard in a while. So nice job on that. I love it, and I'm sure we will talk soon. So come on the show.
Let's do it. Thank you, and let's continue to all of us to build each other up. We need each other. Okay, take care.